Do you really think you get to walk away scot-free? I shot at Jason, feeling the sting of betrayal deep in my chest. Jason smirked, his eyes cold. You're delusional, Rebecca. You and that bastard are out. This house is mine. A low gasp escaped my lips as I stared at him, my home of 7 years suddenly feeling hostile and foreign. It had been just 3 weeks since I'd returned from my sister Dana's place after giving birth to Ethan. I'd stayed there to recover and receive much-needed support, but I hadn't expected to come back to this nightmare. Your clothes are gone, Jason said nonchalantly, folding his arms across his chest. Mom thought it best you not keep any false hope. False hope? I echoed, incredulous. Jason's mother, Diane, stepped forward, her face stern. I know about your affair, Rebecca. That child isn't Jason's. The weight of her words hit me like a physical blow. What are you talking about? Diane, Ethan is Jason's son. I have never... Spare me the lies. Diane's voice cracked with anger. I saw the pictures, the emails. I may have believed you once, but not anymore. Flashes of my life with Jason crossed my mind. The initial whirlwind romance, the engagement so full of promises, and our wedding day. Once his touch was gentle and his words kind. What had happened? Where did it all go wrong? Think it through, Jason interrupted my thoughts, voice dripping with sarcasm. Doesn't take a genius to figure out why you suddenly got pregnant after all those years. I felt my knees threatening to buckle. We struggled for years, Jason, the treatments, the hopes and disappointments, and now you're saying... He cut me off, looking disinterested. Yeah, and guess what? I gave up hope a long time ago. Inside, a fire began to burn. So that's it? You just stopped caring, and now you want to throw me and your own son out based on lies? You're in denial, Rebecca, Jason said dismissively. It's over. Cold disbelief gave way to clarity. This wasn't random. It had been brewing. Jason's sudden withdrawal and indifference when I announced I was pregnant. Him barely being home, always on business trips. The harsh, stinging accusations I had brushed aside because I loved him and believed in us. Diane's eyes bore into mine, searching for truth or perhaps a crack in my resolve. I met her gaze evenly. You believe those fabricated stories? Check your sources, Diane. I never cheated. I loved your son, and you know it. She hesitated. I could see uncertainty flicker in her eyes, but Jason's words had woven their poison well. Turning my focus back to him, I said, You've been distant, disrespectful. Is this really about me, or is it you who's hiding something? Jason's face darkened, but he remained silent. I knew then that I needed to call Dana. She'd been my rock, my reality check. Her voice on the other end came calmly, Rebecca, come back here. You and Ethan need safety and clarity. Nodding, I gathered what dignity I had left. Fine, I'll leave. But this isn't over, Jason. He laughed mockingly. Oh, it very much is. As I walked out with Ethan in my arms, a sense of steely determination took over. Jason might think he won this round, but I had just begun my fight. No way would I let lies and betrayal steal what was rightfully mine. With my sister's support and love, I knew I'd find the strength to challenge Jason's deception and protect my son. I settled into Dana's guest room, feeling the dull ache of betrayal. Ethan slept soundly in his crib while I stared at the ceiling, replaying Jason's cruel words. The next morning, Dana found me in the kitchen, a cup of coffee cradled in my hands. How did you sleep? She asked softly, placing a hand on my shoulder. Not well, I admitted, my voice breaking slightly. I can't believe this is happening. We'll get through this, Dana assured me. You're not alone. Her words were a balm to my raw nerves. She began cooking breakfast while I took a deep breath, ready to recount the agonizing events that led me here. You know, things weren't always this bad, I started, staring at the steam rising from my coffee. Jason's parents were like family to me, especially during the fertility treatments. Diane and Robert were so supportive. I remember, Dana said, flipping pancakes. They were always around, helping out. I nodded, recalling their kind gestures that once felt so genuine. But Jason's prolonged business trips and constant absence had frayed the bonds that held us together. His coldness grew more pronounced with each passing month, especially after I got pregnant. He wasn't there for any of my doctor appointments, I continued, my voice thick with emotion. I was so sick all the time, and handling everything myself was nearly impossible. Dana turned to face me. Why didn't you ask for help? I didn't want to bother you, I said, shaking my head. And I kept telling myself Jason would come around, but instead, he started throwing around accusations of adultery even before Ethan was born. Dana's eyes narrowed. That jerk. What's his game? I don't know, I admitted, but it all makes sense now. This wasn't random. He's been planning something. Just then, Emily, Dana's 8-year-old daughter, bounced into the kitchen. Mom, can Aunt Becky and Ethan come to my school's family day? Dana smiled warmly at her daughter. Of course, darling, but remember, Aunt Becky has a lot going on right now. It's okay, I said, managing a smile. I think it would be good for us. I needed to feel normal, if only for a little while. After breakfast, Dana's husband, Tim, pulled me aside. Rebecca, if you need anything, we're here for you. Don't hesitate to ask. I nodded, grateful for his straightforward support. Thank you, Tim. It means a lot. Meanwhile, Jason's neglect echoed in my mind. I thought of how he dismissed my sickness, how he barely called, leaving everything to me. And those degrading phrases, screaming for a divorce, accusing me of being with someone else. Ethan stirred and whimpered in his crib. I picked him up, feeling his warmth. You're my reason to fight, I whispered into his soft hair, kissing the top of his head. Later, Dana helped me organize my things. As we packed, she remarked, Remember, you have the power to turn this around. Don't let Jason's lies define your future. Her strength bolstered my resolve. I'm moving back in here for good. I need to focus on Ethan and figure out our next steps. Dana squeezed my hand. We've got your back, Rebecca. Jason won't know what hit him. Living with Dana brought a semblance of peace. Yet the weight of Jason's accusations and the blatant betrayal lurked constantly. But with my sister by my side, the fog of doubt began to clear. I'd build a new life for Ethan and myself, one without Jason's poisonous presence. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. With every passing day, my determination grew, and I knew I'd find the strength to confront Jason and reclaim my life. The day Ethan was born was a whirlwind of emotions. Dana's home was filled with the chaos of labor and the serenity of new life. Despite the joy, there was an unmistakable void where Jason should have been. Congratulations, Rebecca, Dana beamed as she handed me my newborn son. He's perfect. Tears streamed down my face as I held Ethan close. I just wished Jason was here, I confessed, the pang of his absence cutting deep. Dana pursed her lips, but refrained from voicing her strong feelings. Instead, she busied herself with ensuring we had everything needed. Days turned into weeks, and still, Jason's presence was merely a ghost in emails and brief clinical phone calls. One dreary afternoon, my phone buzzed with an unexpected call from Diane. Swallowing my apprehension, I answered. Hello? Rebecca, Diane's voice was steeped in sternness. Jason has decided to file for divorce, citing infidelity. We have evidence. My heart sank. What kind of evidence? I asked, clutching the phone tighter. Photos, emails, reports from a private investigator, she replied sharply. Rebecca, it's clear to us. I didn't hear the rest. Fury and injustice overwhelmed me. I need to see this evidence for myself, I snapped before hanging up. Dana found me gripping the counter, shaking with rage. What happened? Jason's filing for divorce, accusing me of cheating, I spat. They have supposed evidence. Dana's face darkened. This is Jason's doing. We need to confront him. You can't allow him to tear your life apart with lies. I nodded, finding strength in her determination. I'm going back to our home. I need to face him and see this evidence. The next morning, I drove to what used to be our home. My nerves were fraying, but rage and resolve pushed me forward. Jason was going to face his consequences. I stepped inside the house, finding Jason and his parents waiting, looking smug and confident. My belongings were absent, replaced by a chilling emptiness. Rebecca, let's make this quick, Jason said, a smirk playing on his lips. The evidence is indisputable. You expect me to believe your lies? I shot back. Show me this so-called evidence. Jason pulled out a folder, tossing it onto the coffee table. Diane and Robert looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. I sifted through photos of me talking to friends, innocent interactions twisted into falsehoods. This is all fabricated, I said, voice shaking with suppressed rage. Jason shrugged. Believe what you want, the court will side with me. I looked at Diane and Robert. You've known me for years. You think I'd betray your son like this? Robert frowned, finally speaking up. It seems awfully coincidental. Jason, are we sure about this? Jason's eyes flashed with anger. Dad, we have the proof. Rebecca's deceit is clear. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I didn't cheat, and I won't let you ruin my life based on lies. If we're going to court, I'm ready to fight. Jason's smirk faltered, but he quickly regained composure. You're delusional if you think you can win. The room felt charged with tension as I faced them, unyielding. I had my son to protect and a truth to defend. Jason's betrayals wouldn't break me. Dragging my eyes to Diane and Robert, I said, think about the kind of person standing next to you. This isn't about me. It's about what Jason's hiding from you all. The expressions on their faces wavered, uncertainty creeping in. I saw a flicker of doubt in Diane's eyes, and it fueled my determination. Believe me or not, I challenged, the truth will come out. And Jason, you'll regret this. Without waiting for a response, I turned on my heel, walking out the front door and slamming it behind me. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready for war. Determination propelled me forward. I knew I couldn't let Jason get away with this. The next few days were a blur of legal consultations and gathering evidence. My lawyer, Mr. Turner, reassured me, we're going to fight this, Rebecca. Jason's accusations won't hold up in court if they are false. Armed with my newfound strength, I returned to my former home. I wasn't going to let Jason's deceit break me. Stepping inside, I found Jason, Diane, and Robert waiting for me. Here she is, Jason sneered. Come to admit your lies. Ignoring his taunt, I addressed Diane and Robert. I have something to say. It's time for the truth to come out. Jason's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Taking a deep breath, I began. Jason's the one who's been unfaithful, not me. He's been cheating on me during his business trips. Preposterous! Jason shouted, but I noticed a flicker of fear in his eyes. Diane, Robert, I continued. I hired an investigator of my own. Here's the evidence. I pulled out photos, emails, and proof of Jason's affair with a colleague. Diane's face turned pale as she flipped through the documents. Jason, is this true? Jason's smirk faltered slightly, but he tried to maintain his composure. She's lying. This is all fabricated. But Diane's gaze hardened. We've known Rebecca for years. Her honesty has never been in question until you planted those seeds of doubt. Mom, you can't seriously believe her. Jason's voice wavered, his confidence cracking. Robert, who had been silent, now spoke up, his voice steady. Jason, I need you to be honest. Did you or did you not have an affair? Caught off guard, Jason hesitated. Dad, it's complicated. I seized the moment. Your accusations against me were baseless, Jason. It was all a ploy to cover up your own infidelity. So what if I was unfaithful? Jason snapped, finally losing his composure. Rebecca was never there for me. I needed someone. The room fell into a heavy silence. Diane looked at her son with a mixture of disappointment and anger. You destroyed our trust, Jason. You let us believe in lies just to cover up your own failings. Robert's expression mirrored Diane's. You've gone too far, son. We're supporting Rebecca in this, period. Jason's face turned red with rage, but he knew he was cornered. You'll regret this, he threatened, but his words lacked the usual menace. We'll take our chances, Diane responded coldly. Rebecca, what do you need from us? Relief washed over me. I need support for Ethan and myself. I want custody, and I'll need financial help until the divorce is settled. You have it, Robert affirmed. We were fooled, but not anymore. Jason seethed, his mask of control slipping entirely. You think you can just walk away with everything? I'll fight you in court. I met his gaze unflinching. Do what you have to, Jason. But know this, the truth is on my side, and I'm not backing down. Turning to Diane and Robert, I added, Thank you. I never wanted it to come to this, but I'll make sure Ethan grows up in a loving, honest environment. As I walked out, the weight on my shoulders felt lighter. This battle wasn't over, but I wasn't alone anymore. With Diane and Robert's support, I was ready to face whatever came next. Jason had underestimated the strength of truth and family, and that would be his undoing. The living room was thick with tension. Silence hung heavy as Jason's facade crumbled. Diane and Robert's presence gave me courage. I was ready to reveal Jason's true colors. Jason, Diane's voice trembled with anger. You've lied to us all. And for what? To cover your own sins? Jason scoffed, but the cockiness in his demeanor had faded. You don't understand. I had my reasons. Your reasons, I interjected, unable to hold back. Like what, Jason? Justify betraying your family and me? His eyes flashed with irritation. You were obsessed with having a baby. You barely noticed I was drowning. I needed someone, and Amanda understood me. Diane gasped. Amanda? The colleague you traveled with? Jason looked away, his silence confirming her fears. Anger surged through me. So all this time, it was Amanda, and now she's pregnant, isn't she? Jason's jaw clenched. Yes, she is. We're starting a new life, Rebecca. Move on. Diane stepped between us, tears in her eyes. Move on, after the devastation you've caused? You're despicable, Jason. Robert's voice turned steely. This stops now. We're cutting you off financially, and you will support Rebecca and Ethan. You'll hear from my lawyer about the details. Jason's composure snapped. What? You can't just abandon me. I'm your son. You abandoned us first, Robert replied bitterly, and you betrayed the woman who stood by you. Jason's face twisted with rage. This isn't over. I'll fight for everything. You think you can take my life away so easily? I'm not taking your life, Jason, I said, my voice steady. I'm reclaiming mine. Ethan deserves a father who isn't a liar. This is for him. Diane, her tears drying into a hardened resolve, nodded. We'll testify against you if needed. Rebecca deserves justice. Jason looked at his parents, the reality of his situation sinking in. You're making a mistake. You'll regret this. No, Jason, Diane answered firmly. Our mistake was believing your lies and turning against Rebecca. That ends now. I stepped closer to Jason, feeling a fire of resilience within me. You underestimated me. I've endured your neglect and betrayal for far too long. It's time to take control. Anger flickered in his eyes. Do your worst, he spat, storming out of the house. As the door slammed shut, I turned to Diane and Robert. Thank you for standing with me. This isn't easy, but I'm grateful for your support. Diane embraced me tightly. Rebecca, we were deceived too. We're sorry for not seeing the truth sooner. Robert placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. You're brave, and we'll help you through this. You have our full support. Leaving their home, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This battle wasn't just for me, it was for Ethan. Jason's threats no longer held power over me. With the truth on my side, I was ready to face the legal war ahead. Back at Dana's, I recounted everything to her. She hugged me tightly. You did it, Rebecca. You took the first step. Yes, I said, a new determination in my voice. Now, we fight. Jason might have started this war, but I was ready to finish it. For Ethan, for myself, and for the truth. The days ahead would be challenging, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't alone anymore. I had my family, and together, we'd face whatever came our way. My resolve steeled as I walked into the courtroom. Jason sat at the defense table, flanked by his lawyer. Flashing a smirk, he leaned back, projecting confidence. But I saw through his facade. Mr. Turner, my lawyer, joined me. Rebecca, remember to stay composed. We have strong evidence on our side. I nodded, clutching Ethan's photo for strength. The judge called us to order, and the trial began. Jason's lawyer kicked off. Your Honor, the defendant, Mr. Keller, is here to contest the wrongful accusations made by Mrs. Keller. We have evidence of her infidelity and negligence as a mother. My anger simmered. Lies. All lies. Mr. Turner countered smoothly, presenting our side. Your Honor, we have ample evidence proving Mr. Keller's infidelity and deceit. We'll show that Mrs. Keller is a devoted mother, wrongfully accused by a manipulative husband. Jason's eyes narrowed. The room buzzed with tension as Mr. Turner presented our evidence. Photos of Jason and Amanda, hotel receipts, emails, and witness testimonies. Each piece shredded Jason's facade further. Mr. Keller, Mr. Turner addressed Jason directly, you accused your wife of infidelity to cover your own. Do you deny these photos and emails? Jason shifted uncomfortably. Those are private matters, he dodged. They don't prove she wasn't unfaithful, too. I couldn't stay silent. Jason, you destroyed everything with your lies. Be honest for once. He glared at me, but said nothing. The judge's gaze bore into him. Mr. Keller, the evidence is substantial. How do you respond? Jason's lawyer tried damage control. Your Honor, regardless of Mr. Keller's actions, we must focus on Mrs. Keller's competence as a mother. Before I could react, Mr. Turner played our trump card. Your Honor, we'd like to call Diane Keller to the stand. Diane took the stand, eyes firm but pained. She began, we believed Rebecca was unfaithful because of Jason's manipulation. We were wrong. She's been nothing but a dedicated mother and wife. Jason's lawyer objected, questioning Diane's objectivity, but she remained resolute. My husband and I hired private investigators. We found nothing against Rebecca. Instead, we discovered Jason's affair. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. Jason's facade crumbled further. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Keller, are you supporting your son's claims? Diane's voice was steady. No, Your Honor. Rebecca is a victim here. We were deceived by Jason. Jason's expression turned desperate. Mom, you can't. Robert stood up from the audience. Enough, Jason. You've done enough damage. It's time to face the consequences. Tears welled up, but I held them back. I had to stay strong for Ethan. The judge looked at Jason one last time. Mr. Keller, you've been found to have misled this court and your family. Custody of Ethan will be granted to Mrs. Keller. You will provide child support and alimony as per the legal stipulations. Jason's defiance deflated. He muttered, This isn't over. It is, I said, standing tall, for Ethan's sake. The judge's final decisions marked the end of the legal battle, but the beginning of a new chapter. Jason had to face the consequences of his betrayal, while I had to rebuild our lives. Leaving the courthouse, Diane and Robert approached me. Rebecca, Diane began, tears in her eyes, we're truly sorry for everything. I smiled, a mix of relief and gratitude. What matters now is building a stable future for Ethan. Dana and Tim were waiting outside, relief etched on their faces. You did it! Dana exclaimed, hugging me tightly. I hugged her back, feeling the warmth of family. We did it. As we walked away, I glanced back at Jason, defeated and alone. It was poetic justice. He underestimated the strength of truth and family, and it was his downfall. Our fight was far from over, but for the first time in a long time I felt hope. We were moving forward, and I was ready for whatever came next, knowing I had the love and support to face any challenge. Weeks passed, and the legal proceedings were finally over. I had full custody of Ethan, along with child support and alimony secured. It felt like a victory, but the real triumph lay in our future. We needed to move on. One morning, I met with a realtor to sell the house. Walking through the empty rooms, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. This place held memories, both good and bad, but it was time to let go. Dana joined me later, helping pack the last of my things. Ready for a fresh start? She asked, her smile warm and reassuring. More than ready, I replied, feeling lighter. I've already found a new place near your place. It's small but cozy. That's perfect, Dana said, carrying a box to the car. We'll be neighbors again. Emily is ecstatic. As we loaded the last of the boxes, Jason appeared at the driveway. My heart raced, but I stood firm, protecting Ethan, who was cradled in my arms. Rebecca, we need to talk, Jason started, his voice lacking its usual arrogance. There's nothing to talk about, I replied coolly. Everything's been settled. He shoved his hands into his pockets, looking defeated. Please, Rebecca, just hear me out. I need another chance. I stared at him, anger bubbling just beneath the surface. Another chance? After everything you put us through? You think you deserve that? Jason sighed, glancing away. I messed up. I was wrong, and I lost everything. Amanda left when she realized I couldn't support her. I have nothing now. That's your own doing, Jason, I said sharply. Ethan and I have moved on. We don't need you. Dana stepped in, her eyes fierce. Jason, leave. You've done enough damage. Jason's shoulders slumped. All fight drained from him. Fine, but remember, I'm still Ethan's father. And you will fulfill your responsibilities, as ordered by the court, I affirmed. Now leave. He left without another word, a broken man. Watching him go, I felt a pang of pity, but it was overshadowed by my resolve to protect Ethan and our new life. Dana wrapped an arm around my shoulders. You did the right thing. He needed to hear that. Nodding, I looked at my son. Ethan deserves a stable, loving home, and that's exactly what we'll give him. We moved into our new home that weekend. It was modest, but full of potential. With Dana and Tim's help, we settled in quickly. Ethan's laughter filled the house, a sound I cherished more than anything. One evening, after putting Ethan to bed, I sat on the porch with Dana. Can you believe how far we've come? I mused, watching the stars. You've been incredibly strong, Dana replied. And now it's all paying off. Thank you for standing by me, I said, squeezing her hand. I couldn't have done it without you. We're family, Dana smiled. That's what we do. As the days turned into weeks, our new life began to take shape. The house slowly felt like home, filled with love and laughter. I found peace in the routine, and Ethan thrived in the nurturing environment we created. One day I received a call from Diane. Rebecca, I just wanted to check on you and Ethan. How are you? We're doing well. Diane, I replied, a smile touching my lips. We've settled in nicely. I'm glad to hear that, Diane said, her voice tinged with relief. I miss Ethan terribly. Could we visit sometime? Of course, I agreed. You both are welcome anytime. Life was far from perfect, but it was ours to rebuild. Each day I grew stronger, fueled by the love of my family and the determination to forge a better future. Ethan would grow up knowing that amidst the trials we found strength, and in unity we found hope. Months turned into a year, and life settled into a rhythm. Each day brought new joys and challenges, but the peace we found was our own. Ethan thrived, his laughter lighting up our home. One Saturday, Dana invited me and Ethan over for a family gathering. The backyard buzzed with energy as kids played and adults chatted. "Rebecca," Dana called, waving me over. "Come help me with the barbecue." I joined her by the grill, flipping burgers and catching up. "This is exactly what we needed," I said, watching Ethan play with Emily and their friends. Dana smiled. "We're so lucky to have each other. Family is everything." In the midst of our conversation, my phone buzzed. It was Diane. "Hi, Diane. Everything okay?" "Rebecca," she began, her voice shaky. "I have some news about Jason." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" "He's been struggling. Amanda left him for good, and he's now working menial jobs to make ends meet. He's hit rock bottom." For a moment, I felt a flicker of pity, but recalling the betrayals, I steeled myself. "I see. Thanks for letting me know." "Despite everything, he's still Ethan's father," Diane added gently. "I hope he can eventually find a way to be a better man." "I hope so too," I replied, glancing at Ethan, who deserved better. "But my priority is Ethan's well-being." Later that day, after the gathering, Dana and I sat on the porch reflecting. "Can you believe how far we've come?" she marveled. "You're stronger than ever." "I had to be," I said, placing a hand on Ethan's head as he dozed off in my lap, for him and for myself. The next few months saw more stability and growth. My bond with Ethan deepened, and we flourished in our supportive community. Then, one rainy afternoon, Jason appeared at my door. "Rebecca, we need to talk," he said, rain dripping from his hair. I hesitated, but stepped aside, letting him in. "What do you want, Jason?" He looked broken, a shadow of his former self. "I've lost everything. Amanda, my parents, my job. I'm trying to make amends." "Amends?" I echoed, incredulous. "Do you realize the damage you've caused?" He nodded, eyes downcast. "I've changed, Rebecca. I'm in therapy, working through my issues. I want to be a part of Ethan's life." "I'm not sure I can trust you," I admitted. "Ethan's stability comes first." "I understand," he sighed. "I'm willing to start small. Supervised visits, anything to show I'm committed to being a better father." A part of me remained skeptical, but another part recognized his sincerity. "Fine," I said, standing firm. "We'll try supervised visits, but one mistake, Jason, and it ends." "Thank you," he responded, relief evident in his eyes. "I won't mess this up." As he left, I felt a mix of emotions. This wasn't forgiveness, but a cautious step forward. For Ethan's sake, I was willing to give Jason a chance to prove himself. A few weeks later, at a family gathering, I watched as Jason interacted with Ethan under my and Dana's watchful eyes. Slowly, trust began to rebuild, not for Jason as my partner, but for him as Ethan's father. Diane called that evening, relief in her voice. "Rebecca, thank you for giving Jason this opportunity. It means the world to him and to us." "Ethan deserves the effort," I replied, "but it's up to Jason to prove he's worthy." As I hung up, I felt a sense of closure. Jason's fall from grace was his own doing, but our future didn't rely on his redemption. It relied on the love and strength we built as a family. That night, as I tucked Ethan into bed, I whispered, "We've come so far, little one, and there's so much more to look forward to." The past year had reshaped our lives, but it had also fortified our spirits. We faced trials, overcame them, and emerged stronger. Together, we were ready to embrace whatever came next, with love, resilience, and unwavering hope. "More gravy, Derek?" I asked, forcing a smile as I held up the gravy boat. My husband of 2 years gave me a withering look. "This turkey is so dry, I'd need to drown it to make it edible," he grumbled. I froze, the boat hovering stupidly in my hand. Dry turkey? Impossible. I'd hired Chef Marcello, one of the top chefs in the city, to prepare this meal. It had cost me a small fortune, but I wanted our first Christmas dinner as husband and wife to be perfect. Derek's complaint stung. I'd gone to such lengths, only to have him criticize my efforts in front of both our families. "Oh, come now, it's not that bad," his mother Ruth protested. "Here, just needs more gravy." She scooped a big spoonful onto Derek's plate, shooting me an apologetic look. More gravy isn't going to rescue this disaster, Derek snapped. He shoved his plate away in disgust. Anger flared within me. How dare he disparage my cooking, and on Christmas no less? I wanted nothing more than to hurl the gravy boat at his impeccably gelled head. But I held myself back. Derek didn't know about my secret chef, and his family didn't know about our charade of a marriage either. Outwardly, I was the doting wife, slaving away in the kitchen to make my husband happy. "I'm sorry the turkey isn't to your taste," I said softly. "I did try my best." Derek snorted derisively. "Well, clearly your best isn't good enough. Honestly, Eliza, I can't fathom how someone could mess up a simple turkey this badly." Simple turkey? This from a man whose idea of cooking was microwaving frozen burritos. I wanted to scream at him, but I swallowed my fury and turned meekly to my mother. "Maybe you could show me your recipe again sometime. I really thought I had it right." My mother's eyes flashed with anger on my behalf, but she simply patted my hand gently. "It's fine, dear. My recipe takes some practice. We'll work on it together." She shot a glare at Derek. "Perhaps if your husband pitched in more in the kitchen, he'd know how difficult cooking can be." Derek bristled, opening his mouth for an angry retort. But his father, Michael, intervened. Now. No need to ruin Christmas dinner with petty squabbles. Eliza clearly worked hard on this meal, so let's just enjoy it, shall we?" He gave his son a quelling look. With a huff, Derek turned sullenly back to his plate, sawing angrily at the turkey as if punishing it for its dryness. I hid a satisfied smile. Oh, he had no idea what was coming. I had barely even begun to ruin his Christmas. Just then the doorbell rang. "Right on time. I'll get it," I said quickly. I ignored Derek's glare as I practically sprinted for the door, heart hammering with anticipation. This was it. My revenge began now. I took a deep breath and composed myself. Then I opened the door with a bright smile. "Chef Marcello, so wonderful of you to stop by." I ushered the distinguished older gentleman into the foyer. Behind me, I heard the clatter of dropped silverware as my guests took in the unexpected arrival. Marcello inclined his head graciously. "Of course, madame. I wanted to compliment you on the meal. It was prepared to perfection." I turned to Derek with an icy smile. "Surprise, darling. I didn't actually cook this dinner. Chef Marcello did. Funny how even a professional got it so terribly, terribly wrong." Derek looked like he wanted to melt into the hardwood floor. His face turned bright red as Chef Marcello gave a slight bow. "My apologies for the deception," the chef said smoothly, "but Madame requested I keep my involvement discreet." My mother pressed a hand to her chest, eyes wide. My dad just shook his head in disbelief, but it was Derek's parents who reacted most strongly. "What is the meaning of this?" Michael demanded, rising from his seat. "Eliza, why on earth would you embarrass Derek like this in front of his family?" Ruth also stood up, glaring daggers at me. "After everything we've done for you, we treated you like our own daughter." I stood calmly amidst the uproar. "Believe me, you'll understand soon enough." I turned to Derek with an icy stare. "Why don't you explain our little arrangement to your parents, darling?" Derek's eyes blazed with anger and humiliation. For a moment, I thought he might actually lunge across the table at me. But then his shoulders slumped in defeat. "Eliza and we're not exactly as we appear," he mumbled. "What do you mean?" Ruth asked sharply. Derek kept his eyes fixed on his plate. "Things haven't been right between us for a long time. I'm away a lot for work on the weekends. I just needed companionship." Michael's face turned thunderous. "Companionship? So you've been cheating on your wife? With who?" I gave a cold, hollow laugh. "Oh, he'll cheat on any young, gullible thing eager for a wealthy man's attention." I tossed photos of Derek with his mistress onto the table. Ruth gasped, and Michael roared in outrage. "You snakes," he bellowed. "We welcomed you into our family." Derek's head snapped up, his eyes locking with mine. "This dinner was a setup," he snarled. "You lying, vindictive bitch." He moved menacingly around the table toward me. My dad stepped forward to block him. "Watch yourself, boy," he growled. Derek ignored him. "I know what this is really about. You're pissed I made you quit your job. You want to leech away my money." I met his furious gaze unflinchingly. "You didn't make me do anything. I chose to leave my job because I loved you and trusted you, but clearly that trust was misplaced." Ruth wrung her hands. "Eliza, I don't understand. You two seemed so happy at the wedding. I smiled bitterly. That's because Derek could be incredibly charming when he wanted something, and at first I was too blinded by love to notice I was just a prize to him. Michael jabbed an accusing finger at his son. You conned us all. Eliza was right to expose your lies. He and Ruth hurried out, leaving Derek alone to face the consequences of his betrayal. My anger drained away, replaced by weariness. The wedding was a dream, I told Ruth quietly. But dreams don't last, and betrayals are hard to forgive. I turned my back on my infuriated husband. The man I had once loved so completely was a mere stranger to me now. And strangers could inflict deep wounds. The weeks after the Christmas fiasco were lonely ones. Derek buried himself in work, using it as an excuse to avoid me. Not that I minded. The charming, attentive man I had married was gone, replaced by a cold stranger, but the empty house wore on me. With too much time alone, my mind turned to darker thoughts, like why a successful man like Derek would even want a housewife. He used to brag about my marketing career, so why insist I quit after the wedding? I began to suspect he wanted me home, not just to cook and clean, but to keep me from prying eyes. Weekends were the worst, with Derek gone from morning till night. He claimed it was for business trips, but my trust in him had cratered. One Friday morning, I woke feeling particularly low. I shuffled to the kitchen in my bathrobe, sighing at the sink full of Derek's dishes from the night before. As I washed up, I spotted his cell phone charging on the counter. He must have forgotten it. A jolt of adrenaline shot through me. Here was my chance to find out what Derek was really up to. My hands shook as I scrolled through his texts. Most were mundane work messages, until I found a thread with a woman named Amber. My chest clenched as I read their suggestive messages planning a weekend rendezvous. So this was why Derek insisted I stay home. Not to cook and clean, but so he could sneak off with his mistress. I wanted to hurl his phone across the room, but I restrained myself. The texts provided concrete proof of Derek's affair, proof I would need for the next phase of my plan. I forwarded the messages to myself before replacing the phone. Derek would pay for making a fool of me, for parading me around as his doting wife while he snuck off to lavish affection on another woman. My mom was reluctant when I asked her to secretly move in for a while under the guise of being our new housekeeper, but she agreed after I confessed my plan to expose Derek's affair. Just be careful, Eliza, she urged. Revenge can be satisfying, but also dangerous. Don't worry, Mom. I know what I'm doing. And I did. With her help, I gathered more evidence of the affair. Credit card receipts from romantic dinners and hotel stays. Photos of Derek and Amber locked in intimate embraces. I hid it all away, waiting for the right moment. Planning my revenge was thrilling but strange. The man I was trying to destroy had been my whole world mere months ago, but that man had never really existed. So I hardened my heart and focused on vengeance. Derek didn't realize what was coming. He underestimated me from the start, the doting wife too blinded by love and trust to doubt him. But I was not that woman anymore. And at Christmas dinner, my deception would eclipse his. My exposure of Derek's affair would stun our families. But more importantly, it would free me from the prison of this toxic marriage. I touched the photo of Amber tucked away in my dresser. You stole my happiness, I whispered to the image of her pretty, smiling face. Now I'm taking back what's mine. Derek would learn you can't treat people like pawns without consequences. I had all I needed to bring his house of lies crashing down. Now all that remained was timing. I just had to bid my time through this charade of a marriage a little longer. Soon Derek would regret the day he ever betrayed me. More wine, ma'am? I smiled at my mother as she refilled my glass in the guise of our housekeeper, Anna. Thank you, Anna. It was a Friday night, and Derek would not be home. My mother and I were enjoying the opportunity to openly discuss our plans for the impending holiday dinner. So I'll confront him first, and then you come in as the chef? I confirmed. Mom nodded. It's less predictable that way. Derek won't know what hit him. I smiled victoriously. Exactly. He's gotten away with this for too long. It's time for a dose of karma. I retrieved the manila envelope I had hidden away and started reviewing its contents. Hard evidence of Derek's betrayal, credit card receipts from restaurants and jewelry stores for his mistress, Amber, hotel charges for weekend stays, incriminating photos. And the pièce de résistance, printouts of Derek's suggestive text conversations with Amber. Mom peered over my shoulder and whistled. Wow, you've really done your homework here. Derek won't have a leg to stand on. I felt a surge of pride. Gathering this evidence had required meticulous planning and patience, but soon it would all pay off. I figured we need overwhelming proof, even if his family are reluctant to believe it at first, I explained. Seeing their precious son for who he really is won't be easy for them. Mom shook her head, her expression a mix of sadness and anger. I still can't believe Derek would do this. He seemed like such a nice young man. I sighed, thinking back to those idyllic early days with Derek, how charming and attentive he'd been. I think that was just an act. The real Derek, the one who insisted I quit my job and stay home, is controlling and dishonest. An act to hide his true nature. I had fallen for it completely, but not anymore. Well, after Christmas he won't be deceiving anyone else, Mom said firmly. We clinked glasses in anticipation of Derek's comeuppance. I savored the prospect of finally making him pay. Oh, and I have one more surprise in store, I said with a wink. I invited Amber to the dinner. She thinks she'll be meeting Derek's parents. Won't she be shocked to see me instead? Mom gasped delightedly. Eliza, that's absolutely diabolical. I love it. I grinned, feeling energized and empowered. For too long I had played the role of dutiful, naive wife. No more. Derek didn't realize it yet, but everything was about to change. Don't worry, I was careful about how I contacted her, I assured Mom. Derek won't suspect a thing. Soon I would take back my independence, exposing Derek's web of lies to our families in the process. He had hurt me deeply, but he had also awakened a vindictive side I didn't know I possessed. After Christmas, Derek's picture-perfect life would be shattered, and I would finally be free. Christmas morning dawned crisp and clear. I should have been full of warm cheer for the holiday. Instead, my heart hammered with anticipation for the dinner ahead. In the kitchen, Mom and I prepared the meal, ensuring everything was perfect. Well, perfect except for Derek's dry turkey. We giggled conspiratorially as we deliberately ruined it. This will really send him into a rage when he thinks you made it, Mom said gleefully. She sobered quickly, though. You're sure you want to go through with this, Eliza? I nodded firmly, ignoring my nervous flutterings. I'm sure. Exposing Derek is the only way I'll be free of him. Mom squeezed my shoulder. Okay, just remember, we're in this together. Together. Unlike my sham of a marriage built on Derek's lies. Anger stirred in my gut, overcoming any last reservations. I was ready. I paid meticulous attention to my appearance before the guests arrived, styling my hair just so and applying flawless makeup. I needed to look composed and confident, not like a scorned wife. Derek arrived first, kissing my cheek perfunctorily. House looks nice, he said with a glance around. Well, make sure dinner doesn't ruin it. I forced a smile. I hope it exceeds your expectations. Oh, it would exceed them all right, but not in the way Derek anticipated. My nerves threatened to resurface as the families gathered, but I kept my poise. Only Mom knew the tempest brewing inside me. At last, we were all seated around the table laden with food. Derek's parents heaped praise on the spread. This looks wonderful, Eliza, Ruth said. You've outdone yourself. Outdone herself, indeed. I nearly laughed out loud. Ruth had no idea a professional chef prepared this meal, but she would soon enough. Let's dig in, Derek said, carving into the turkey. He lifted a bite to his mouth, chewing slowly. I held my breath. His face darkened. It's so dry I can barely swallow, he spat, throwing down his fork angrily. Did you even cook this thing fully, Eliza? And there it was, my cue. I made a show of looking hurt at first. Then I stood slowly, fire in my veins. Actually, Derek, I didn't cook this at all. Chef Marcello handled the whole meal. I stepped aside with a theatrical sweep of my arm as Mom entered, right on time in her chef's uniform. A collective gasp rang out around the table. Derek froze, eyes wide with shock and rage. I smiled coldly. Surprise, darling. It seems even the best chef in town couldn't satisfy your palate. Derek leapt to his feet. How dare you embarrass me like this? He jabbed a finger at me. This little stunt just proves you're nothing but a petty, vindictive bitch. I didn't flinch. Sticks and stones, Derek. Now sit down. We're just getting started. The room crackled with tension. Derek's parents looked bewildered and alarmed. My father sat ramrod straight, ready to intervene if needed. This was it. My moment had arrived. Derek glared at me, fists clenched. The rest of the family looked on warily. I smiled coldly. "What's wrong, darling? You seem nervous." "Enough games, Eliza," Derek growled. "Explain yourself right now." I shrugged. "It's quite simple. You've been lying to everyone about our marriage while carrying on an affair behind my back." Gasps erupted around the table. Derek's mother grasped his arm. "Derek, is this true?" He yanked away angrily. "Of course it's not true." Eliza is clearly having some kind of mental breakdown. He turned on me, seething. "I don't know what's gotten into you, but you're going to regret this little stunt." I laughed derisively. "Oh, am I? That's interesting, considering I haven't even gotten to the best part yet." I slapped the manila envelope down onto the table. Derek eyed it warily. "What's that?" Michael asked in a hard voice. "Evidence of your son's deceit," I replied. I opened the envelope and slid the contents across the table. Credit card statements, photos of Derek with a younger blonde woman, incriminating text messages. Michael and Ruth flipped through them, faces pale. Ruth's hands trembled. "Derek, how could you?" she whispered. He jumped to his feet. "This is all fake," he shouted desperately. "Eliza is setting me up." I shook my head. "Come now, Derek. Lying will only dig the hole deeper." I paused. "But perhaps you need more convincing." Right on cue, the doorbell rang. Derek looked at me sharply. "Who the hell is that?" I moved calmly to answer the door. When I returned, I was accompanied by a petite young blonde woman, Amber. "Hello, Sullivan family," she said brightly, oblivious to the tension. "Sorry I'm late." Derek's face drained of color. I smiled serenely. "You must be Amber, so glad you could join us. Although you seem to be confused, this is my family, not Derek's." Comprehension dawned on her face. She backed away slowly. "Wait, who are you?" "I'm Eliza, Derek's wife." Amber's mouth fell open in dismay. She turned on Derek angrily. "You told me you were divorced," Derek exploded. "You deceitful witch! How dare you orchestrate this ambush? You'll regret crossing me, I promise you that." He lunged for me in a rage, but my father intervened, shoving him back down into his chair. "Sit down and shut up, boy." Derek buried his head in his hands. Around him, his family bombarded him with recriminations. "I welcomed you into our family." Michael roared. Ruth wept quietly. Amber hurried out in humiliation. In the chaos, I slid quietly away with a triumphant smile. My revenge was complete. Now to begin my new life. Derek sat motionless amidst the barrage of recriminations from his family. I stood calmly, arms folded. "Well, Derek, anything to say for yourself?" I asked mildly. He leapt to his feet, pointing a trembling finger in my face. "You deceitful bitch. This little show changes nothing between us." I raised an eyebrow. "Doesn't it? Because your family seems quite convinced now about your despicable character." Michael grabbed Derek's shoulder roughly. "Your wife just exposed you as a liar and a cheat, and you have the gall to insult her?" Derek wrenched away angrily. "This is ridiculous. You're all going to just take her word over mine?" Ruth dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. "It's not just her word, Derek. The evidence is clear, the credit cards, the photos." Her breath hitched on a sob. "How could you betray us all like this?" Derek's confident facade was crumbling. Good. I wanted him to feel the same humiliation I had felt at his hands. "Those photos prove nothing," he insisted, but the fight had gone out of him. He knew the battle was lost. I almost felt pity for him then. He looked so defeated, so small, a far cry from the swaggering, domineering husband I had known. But then I remembered the lonely weekends, the endless hours fretting over his lies. My resolve hardened. "Face it, Derek, your double life has been exposed. Did you really think you could keep deceiving everyone forever?" He sank down into his chair. All arrogance fled. In its place was a broken, desperate man. "Eliza, please," he croaked. "We can work this out." I stepped forward and lifted his chin. "The time for working things out disappeared the first night you crawled into bed with Amber. We're through." Michael grasped Derek's shoulder, fury etched on his face. "You've shamed our family for the last time. I don't ever want to see you again." Ruth sobbed quietly, dabbing at her eyes. "To think we welcomed you into our family. We treated your wife like a daughter." Her eyes flashed angrily at Derek. "You disgrace us all." They turned away, supporting each other as they left him alone to nurse his wounds. He reached for me weakly. "Eliza?" I pulled away, skin crawling at his touch. "We have nothing more to say. I'll be filing for divorce immediately." He crumpled, head in hands. I walked away without looking back. The man I had loved was gone, if he ever even existed. All that remained was a pathetically broken shell. I stepped outside into the bracing air. The cold chilled my tear-streaked cheeks, but I breathed deeply. I was finally free. In the icy air outside, I gulped lungfuls of breath, exhilarated by my victory. Inside, Derek remained trapped in the wreckage of his ruined life. I had gambled everything on this confrontation, unsure if I could really topple the pillar of lies supporting my marriage. But Derek's web of deceit lay in tatters. The revealing of his double life was my emancipation. I left Derek to wallow in self-pity and slipped back inside. In the dining room, Amber sat crumpled against the wall, sobbing into her hands. She flinched when she saw me. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I didn't know he was married." Looking at her tear-stained face, my anger evaporated. She was just another of Derek's victims, foolish perhaps, but undeserving of this humiliation. I squeezed her hand gently. "It's not your fault. Derek lied to us both. What matters now is that we move on, without him." She looked up, eyes rimmed with red but resolute. With a quivering smile, she squeezed my hand back. Sometimes wisdom emerged from even the most broken places. I returned to the dining room, where Derek still sat slumped in despair. At my entrance, he leapt up. "Eliza, please, can't we talk about this?" He moved towards me, hands extended beseechingly. I stepped back. "There's nothing left to say. It's over, Derek." He grabbed for my wrist. "You can't just throw away our entire marriage." I wrenched my arm away, skin crawling from his touch. "This sham of a marriage was over long ago. You ended it, not me." Derek's voice broke. "Haven't you punished me enough?" "This isn't about punishment," I said coldly. "It's about revealing the truth and reclaiming myself. I won't be party to your lies anymore." I turned my back on his anguished face. Let him drown in misery. He had inflicted enough on me. His plaintive cries followed me out, hammering against my resolve. But I did not falter. The time had come to close this wound for good. In the hallway, I embraced my parents. "It's over," I whispered. "I'm finally free." Dad's eyes glistened with tears as he hugged me close. "I'm so proud of you, Eliza. You're the strongest woman I know." I turned to Mom. "Thank you for everything. I couldn't have done this without you." She squeezed my hands, her eyes shining. "That's what family is for. Now go and start your new life." I stepped outside, turning my face up to the winter sun. Its radiance warmed my reborn spirit. I had emerged from the darkness, scarred perhaps, but unbroken. Later that week, I filed for divorce, retaining an ironclad lawyer who ensured I received a fair settlement. Derek fought at first but eventually surrendered, too drained to prolong the battle. With my new independence secured, I reclaimed my job at the marketing firm, rising higher than ever before. Derek faded into the past, too, a cautionary tale left behind. Sitting in my new corner office, I smiled as I looked at the glimmering city skyline. The future stretched before me, full of possibility. I had taken back my life, and this time I was building it on my own terms.